Good evening, friends. Today we'll be discussing on Indian Constitution and Emerging Policies, Unit number 8. After India has attained its independence, it has decided to develop the Indian economy, that too in a planned way. It was planned to create a democratic and just and prosperous society. For that, they have taken three ways to achieve this development. The first one is they thought that we need to have the constitution and we need to have legal reforms. So that was the first step which was introduced or taken by the government of India to develop the society. The first one is constitution and legal reforms. The second one, they thought that the state has to support the welfare activities because most of the people at the time were deprived and most of the people are economically backward, socially backward. So they thought that it must be the responsibility of the state to provide welfare activities. And the third one is we need to have a planned development based on mixed economy. We need to have a planned development based on mixed economy. These are the three ways by which the Indian government has thought to develop the Indian society. So in the year 1951, on 1st April, we have gone for first 5 year plan, and later on we have continued these 5 year plans, my dear friends, in order to transform the society, develop the society. So the Indian Constitution, okay. So in order to draft the Constitution, my dear friends, the government of India has appointed Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution. It also has other members like Gopalaswamy Iyengar, Krishna Swami Iyer, Syed Muhammad Sadallah, Munshi, and so on, my dear friends. And this committee has drafted the Indian Constitution and submitted it to the then President Rajendra Prasad on 21st February 1948. And this constitution consists of 315 articles along with 8 schedules, my dear friends. And the Indian Constitution or the drafting committee has ensured that whatever the UN declarations, human rights are there, that has been inscribed in the Indian Constitution, my dear friends. It has fundamental rights, fundamental duties, along with directive principles of the state policy, which provide for protection of its people, along with women, my dear friends. The preamble of the Indian Constitution provides to secure to all the citizens social, economical, political, justice, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and opportunities, dignity of all the individuals, and the unity of the nation. This is what has been mentioned in the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Now, let us discuss about some of the constitutional provisions which are meant for women. The first one is Article 14. The state shall not deny to any person equality before the law on the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. That means all the people are equal in front of the state, and the state has to provide equal opportunities in each and every domain, irrespective of caste, irrespective of creed, irrespective of gender, irrespective of regionality. That is what is mentioned by article, what is meant by Article 14. Article 15 of the Indian Constitution has stated that the state shall not discriminate any citizen on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. So, if any person is going to discriminate, then those people can be punished. So, Article 15 says that there will not be any discrimination on any of the grounds, my dear friends. Article 15, Clause 3 provides that nothing prevents the state from making any special provision for women as well as children. So, the Constitution of India has said that in order to look after the welfare of the women and children, the state can design the policies or provisions, special provisions, which are meant for them so that we can develop them in all the dimensions, my dear friends. It may be related with education, it may be related with health, It may be related with anything which is going to help them in developing their social, economical, political participation or anything, my dear friends. This is according to Article 15, Clause 3. The state has a right to have special provisions. They can design the policies which are meant for women and children. According to Article 15, Clause 4, it permits the state to make special provisions for the advancement of any socially and economically, or sorry, socially and educationally backward people. So the state can design the policies or provisions for the people who are socially backward as well as educationally backward too. We can see that we are going to provide free and compulsory education for the age of 14 years, and we are also going to provide school books, uniform, everything free of cost. We're also going to run residential school for the people who are economically and socially backward too. We can see that the government is designing the policies as per the requirements when and wherever it is necessary. Now let us discuss about Article 16. Article 16 talks about equality of opportunity for all its citizens in matters relating to employment and or appointment to any office under the state. That means we cannot discriminate any person. We are going to provide equality in terms of employment or appointment. Article 23 of the Indian Constitution provides for the rights against exploitation and prohibits traffic, human being trafficking, and beggary and similar forms of forced labor. We can see that some of the children are forced into labor or they're into beggary like. Recently, we must have seen in Hyderabad last 2 years back nearby Charminar, nearly 400 children have been rescued. 400 children who belong to Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and they are forced to come and work in the bangle industry for longer period. So we have forced labor. And recently, a person from northern part of India came to Hyderabad and he is running organized beggary, my dear friends. He is paying around 300 rupees per the people to beg for them, and is also going to provide lunch and supper. And they are giving targets for the people to beg how much money they or arms they have to collect, my dear friends. So anything like human trafficking, forced beggary, or forced labor, all these are also prohibited according to Article 23 of the Indian Constitution. Along with this, we also have specific provisions to ensure rights of women incorporated in the directive principles of the state policy. The first one is Article 38, Clause 1. According to Article 38, Clause 1, the state is to ensure a social promoting the welfare of all the people. It is the duty, it is the responsibility of the state to promote welfare of the people. And according to Article 38, Clause 2, the duty of the state is to minimize the inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in state and facilitate and provide facilities are also the opportunities. So according to Article 38, Clause 2, it is the duty of the state to minimize the inequalities between the people, between different sections of people. And according to Article 39, it says that the state has can grant to all its citizens, both men and women, equal rights to have adequate means of livelihood. So each and every person will have the right to have adequate means for livelihood. At the same time, it also says that it enjoins the states to direct in policy towards securing equal pay for both men and women. So the state has to design the policies to ensure that both the gender can get the same wages, my dear friends. And it also says that it is the duty of the state to protect the health and strength of the workers, both men and women, along with the children, from abusing and entry into um, avocations which does not suit them, does not suit to their age or to their strength, my dear friends. So it is the duty of the state to also take care of this protection of health and the strength of the women, workers, and so on. Article 41 of the Indian Constitution states that the state shall guarantee within its economic limits to all the citizens the right to work, to educate, and public assistance in certain areas. We can see that the government is providing mudra loans for the people so that they can do petty business. There is no need for them to depend on money lenders here and there. At the same time, for the SCs, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and even for the backward communities, the government is providing loans so that they can be self-employed. For the SCs and STs, the government is going to provide subsidy from 30% to 50%, whereas for the BC communities, like it is up to 25%, my dear friends. They are going to give input subsidy from 25 to 50% depending on the communities, depending on the economical condition and social condition of the people. So it is the duty of the state to guarantee within their economic limits to all its regions the right to work, to educate, and also provide assistance in certain areas. Article 42. And even if we see in this assistance, my dear friends, the government is also going to provide input for doing agriculture too. Right to Bandhu scheme is there, which is going to provide some money so that they can procure the seeds, fertilizers to take upon agriculture activity. So, as per the economical conditions, my dear friends, the state can initiate any of the programs either to get them the right to work or educate or some assistance in certain areas. If we see for the shepherds, they're also going to give sheep like so that they can improve their economical condition. And if we see in terms of fishermen, they are giving the fish seed so that the aqua cultivation can be strengthened in Telangana state and so on. So these kind of schemes have already been implemented as per Article 41 of the Indian Constitution. Now let us discuss about Article 42. It states that the state can make provisions for just and human conditions of work and maternity relief. For the women and children, they cannot be placed under hazardous places. They cannot be placed during the night time, especially in the industries. So these kind of provisions the state is going to prepare. At the same time, it is also going to say that the lady can become a prospective mother. So it is the duty of the state to provide certain laws so that the mother can also have maternity benefit, that she can have the leave, maternity leave, paid leave, so that she can take care of her family and child, my dear friends. Article 44 of the Indian Constitution provides for uniform civil code. We are going to have a uniform civil code. It is going to emphasize the need for codifying personal laws of different communities and evolving for a uniform civil code. Uniform civil code. Recently, the previous government has talked about UCC. They said that we are going to have uniform civil code which can be applicable for each and every citizen, irrespective of gender, irrespective of creed, irrespective of regionality. There cannot be differences in terms of civil codes. That is what is meant by the earlier government. So Article 44 of the Indian Constitution talks about providing a uniform civil code which is applicable for each and every citizen equally. Article 48 of the Indian Constitution provides for safeguarding the forest. Okay, they are also going to say that our duty is to safeguard the forest, along with safeguarding the women, my dear friends, which safeguards the women. Article 51 of the Indian Constitution, Clause A, says that it is the fundamental duty of every citizen to renounce, practice to the dignity of women. So it is the duty of all the citizens that their duty is to ensure that they respect, they increase the dignity of women. So these are the constitutional provisions which are meant for women, my dear friends. Now let us discuss about the government policy and women. Women's development is in India is rooted in the Indian Constitution. According to the Indian Constitution, it talks for, it advocates for equality of all the sexes, gender before the law, which is the most fundamental right. Policies were initiated, programs were formulated by the government, voluntary organizations were expected to deliver the benefits of social welfare to women in each and every corner of the society. For this, the public policy tried to improve the conditions of women, which was initiated, and we can see that from the first 5 year plan. The first 5 year plan was designed, implemented during 1951 to 1955. The major objective of this first 5 year plan was to initiate a process of development which would raise the standard of living. The plan envisaged for the welfare measures meant for women. In this, they have looked on for the services, social services like health, education, sanitation, housing, and rehabilitation. In the year 1953, the government of India has established a central social welfare board. In the year 1953, the government of India has established a central social welfare board, and this has symbolized the welfare approach to women's problems. We can also see that it also reflected the community development approach, which envisaged for the first time the need for organizing women into Mahila Mandals. This body frames policies, makes its own development programs, and implement them in the welfare extension projects. This is also a three-tier structure of welfare and development program with agencies both at the central level, state level, and at the local level. In the previous class, we have discussed about this in detail. The major responsibility for implementing the programs lies on various departments and the agencies of government. The main agencies of planning and implementing at the center are the Planning Commission, Ministry of Education, and Social Welfare, with its two specialized agencies, Central Social Welfare Board and National Council of Women's Education. These are the two agencies which are going to design the policies, my dear friends. Ministry of Health and Family Planning, Ministry of Home Affairs, and Ministry of Labor and Employment also shared the work which is being implemented through these departments. Now, let us go for the second 5 year plan, which was implemented during 1956 to 61. This plan mainly aimed to achieve rapid industrialization and emphasize maximum production, full employment, and attainment of economic equality and social justice. The focus of this plan was on the problem of women workers. It recognized the need for organizing women's workers. The plan stated that the women should be protected against injuries at work, should receive maternity benefits, and crutches should be provided in the workplaces for the children. They talked about three things. One is, because if they are going to work in the industries, they may have some injuries. So our duty is to protect them from injuries. We cannot stop injuries, but we can protect them. We can reduce the percentage. And if the persons are injured, then it is the duty or of the state to ensure that they get speedy recovery and so on, or else they get compensation and so on. Along with that, they also stated that the women should receive maternity benefits, and if the couple, because they get only leave for 3 months to 6 months, right now it is 6 months. After 6 months, the lady has to come back to the office at any cost. So the lady has to give the take care of the child, feed the child with milk, everything. So for that reason, it also stated that it is the duty of the state to ensure that the baby care center or crutches in the workplace for the children. It also suggested speedy implementation of equal pay for equal work, because at that time we have seen that there was different pay for male and women. So they said that we need to ensure that we are going to have equal pay for both the gender, my dear friends. And they also said that we need to provide training for the women. We need to train the women so that they can enhance the skills and they can also compete for higher jobs. By the end of the plan, it was found that many employees were reluctant to employ women due to necessity of providing all these welfare measures for the women. They have to provide leaves, they have to provide benefits, they have to take care of crutches and so on. And obviously we cannot expect the same thing, same sort of work from the male. That was the notion of business magnates or industrialists at the time. That's the reason why they were reluctant to provide employment for the women, my dear friends. So this resulted in the decline of female work participation in the workforce. Now let us discuss about the third 5-year plan, which was implemented from 1961 to 66. The third 5-year plan incorporated the objectives of the previous plan. Whatever way they have taken up in the second 5-year plan, the same objectives have also been carried forward in the third 5-year plan. And one of the major objectives of this plan was to achieve self-sufficiency. That means we have to depend on ourselves, because at that time most of the food was imported and most of the technology was imported. Even now, in by the year 2024 also, we are depending on some of the other countries, maybe for crude oil, maybe for technology, maybe for some of the other reasons. We are depending on the other. So at the time during the third 5-year plan, the state has envisaged or decided that we have to become self-sufficient and self-reliable. This plan focused on expansion of girls' education. That was the main strategy for women's development, because without education we cannot expect the women to be aware of their rights. We will not be able to expect them to fight for their rights, and also we cannot expect, without education we cannot expect them to take up a job of their choice and enhance their economical condition. So the strategy which was adopted by the then government was to educate the girl child, so that maybe not now, maybe in the coming future, we can look after the women's development or achieve women's development. Uh, they have condensed courses for adult women. They also designed health programs, nutrition, and family planning programs, which were continued. At the time, if you see, the government of India has gone for evening schools, mission blackboard, and so on, because most of the people were illiterates, ignorant. So, in order to educate them, in order to remove the blind faith, all these things, the government has taken certain measures in order to educate the masses. So they have designed the curriculum for them in a different way, my dear friends. At the same time, they have designed health programs, nutritional programs, family planning programs, and so on, which were also continued, my dear friends. In social welfare programs, my dear friends, the largest the largest share was provided for expanding rural welfare services and condemned courses of education. The fourth plan could not be launched in the year 1966 due to the bad shape of economy. So at the time, the government has gone for an annual plan. These were launched for the next 3 years, 3 financial years. So the fourth 5-year plan has been launched in the year 1969 to 1974. The emphasis of this fourth 5-year plan was on agriculture. The earlier two plans, it was on industrialization, increase the production, have self-sufficiency. But by the fourth 5-year plan, the government has emphasized more on agriculture sector. And it was also recognized as one of the key factors for the development of the society. In this plan, the emphasis was on women's education too. The basic policy was to promote women's welfare within the family as the base of operation. The outlay of family planning was stepped up to reduce the birth rate from 40 to 24 per thousand through mass education. Our duty is to ensure that our duty is to reduce the birth rate, because as the population was increasing, like it becomes more it increases the more burden on the state, because at the time ours is a developing country. We got freedom and we were struggling to improve and strengthen our economical condition. And it is the duty of the state to take care of social welfare activities at the same time generate employment opportunities, and so on. But as the population is increasing, like anything, the responsibility of the state also increases. So the government thought that it is the duty for us to take these family programs in depth into the society, educate the masses, and ensure that the birth rate can be reduced, my dear friends. They thought that for every 1,000 people, from 40, it has to be reduced to 24 through mass education. Priority was given for the immunization and preschool children and supplementary feeding for children. They said that if a child is born and if the child is not healthy physically, then he cannot become mentally strong. So if a person who is not physically and mentally strong, he cannot be a good human resource for the nation. He becomes dependent on the family or the state. So the state has thought that it must be the duty of the state to provide immunization so that the child will not have any issues. Even now, my dear friends, the government goes on for these polio drops so that none of the child born in India has the problem. Like they give a vaccine for measles, they give vaccine for each and every problem, my dear friends. We talked about immunization. Our duty is to provide immunization for all the children. At the same time, it also talked about feeding the child. We have these Anganwadi centers. Through Anganwadi centers, the state is providing additional food supplement for the prospective mother so that if she is healthy, she can give birth to a healthy child. And if the child is healthy, the nation is healthy. Remember that. And after the birth, because of the low economical condition, they may not provide nutritious food for the child. So the state thought that it is a responsibility to also take care of the children by providing supplementary feeding for the children. And they're also expected for nursing mothers. They're also expected that the voluntary organizations were allowed to organize programs of social welfare because there are plenty of philanthropists. Even the government provides the um, finances or money for the voluntary organizations to take care of the welfare programs because the government will not have sufficient human resource uh, and they do not have the conditions to go to each and every person, understand their problems and address these issues. So the government thought that the organizations, voluntary organizations, can go to the people, understand their conditions and do the best in addressing the issues. So they also uh, allowed the voluntary organizations to take care of these voluntary programs. Up to the fourth 5 year plan, priority has been given to education and then to health and lastly for the welfare programs, my dear friends. And let us see the committee on the status of women during this period. During the fourth 5 year plan, the government of India has constituted a committee on the status of women by a resolution of the Ministry of Education and Social Welfare on 22nd September 1971. They have appointed this committee in order to examine all the questions which are related with the rights and status of women across the country so that they can provide useful guidelines for the formulation of social policies. So the committee had to examine the constitutional, legal, and administrative provisions with a bearing on the social status of women, their education, as well as employment. So they also try to assess the impact of these provisions during the last 2 decades on the status of women across the country, especially that too in the rural areas, to suggest effective programs. And they also have to study or consider the development of education among women and determine the factors which are responsible for slow progress and also suggest the remedial measures. And it also tried to do a survey on the problems of working women, including discrimination in the employment, as well as also to see whether they are getting the same remuneration or not. And they also try to examine the status of women both at the household as a mother in the changing social patterns and their problems in the sphere of further education and employment. They also try to undertake the study on implication of the population policies and family planning programs, that too on the status of women. Because if you see, ours is a patriarchal system, and there is a huge expectation that the girl has to give birth to a male child, because it was linked with the hell and heaven concept. If a person is to put to death, at the time they expect that the male child has to dispose the dead body, then only the doors of the heaven will be open for them. The soul can rest in heaven. So these kind of concepts are there. So when the government has introduced these family planning programs, they try to control the population, like when they have introduced the policies, what kind of impact it has on the society, especially on the women they intended to study. And it also tried to study, suggest measures which would allow the women to play a proper role in building upon the family and the nation. So the committee, after doing a study, they have submitted a report in the year 1974 with the title Towards Equality. And the suggestions or the findings of this committee are: the majority of the women are not enjoying the rights and opportunities which were granted to them by the Indian Constitution. Why? Because of patriarchy, or else lack of awareness, or else low educational levels, or maybe conservatism. So they said that majority of the women are not enjoying the rights, neither the opportunities. I'd also said that increase in the incidence of dowry, which lowers the status of women. Incidence of dowry. If the dowry is increasing, if the demand for dowry is increasing, that means indirectly it is going to decrease the status of women. And women are ignorant of their legal rights. The report also said that women are ignorant. They do not have awareness on the rights which are provided by the government to them regarding personal aspects, regarding marriage, divorce, adoption, inheritance, and so on. And there has been an increase in the enrollment of girls in schools. A wide gap, even though a wide gap exists between the enrollment between the boys and girls. Even though the girl child enrollment has increased, majority of them are not even coming to the school. We can see the wide disparities. And we also see the disparities in the educational progress of girls between rural and urban areas. If we see, the girls in the urban areas are able to continue higher education and so on. But even now, as on 2024, we can see that most of the girls, after the 10 plus 2 or even in the schooling, they are forced to stop and they are forced to go for marriage, my dear friends. And there is also a decline in sex ratio, which indicates that there is a high rate female maternal and infant mortality. This is due to the neglect of public health care services, maternity and child health services, my dear friends. We can see that infant mortality rate is increasing. Why? Because of neglect of the public health system. And also said that modernization has displaced women from active participation in the productive process, because modernization encouraged modern technology, my dear friends, which has been replacing human beings and animal power with the mechanization. And this was one of the reasons, like the women active participation was being kept aside, or else they have been displaced from the workplace. The committee has pointed out that modernization has created new imbalances and disparities, and women have been adversely affected. It stressed that disabilities and inequalities imposed on women have been seen in each and every context of the Indian society. And the women are being exploited like anything. The committee observed that women's participation in politics increased in the elections, and women's readiness to express their views on issues which are directly concerning their day to day life is also being improved. But it felt that though women's participation in politics increased, the total impact on the political process is very, very negligible. This is due to inadequate attention paid to educate women politically by the political parties. Even now, we can see that most of the political parties in front of the media, they say that women are being deprived of political participation. But when it comes for voting all these things, they do not support reservation for women in the assembly and parliament elections, my dear friends. We can see a dual standard. So there is less or inadequate attention towards education of women towards politics. The committee also pointed out that the political parties look upon women as appendages to men, and they had no one to represent them in decision making bodies, either the state or nation. The committee has recommended that women's political rights should be made more functional, and the true nature of social inequalities and disabilities which hampers women's participation in politics should be recognized and ensure that these obstacles should be removed so that they can take active part. The committee also recommended the establishment of statutory women's panchayats at the village level, as women constitute a critical input in national development. It also suggested that there must be women's panchayats with autonomy and resources of their own for management and administrative of welfare and development programs which are meant for women. These measures also suggested to break the traditional attitudes which inhibit the women from participating actively in decision making bodies. It also recommended to provide 15% um, reservation which may be included to all the committees. So wherever there are any committees, they said that 15% should be represented by the women so that they can understand, they can exhibit their issues and so on, and the state can also hear to the voices of the women. So now let us discuss about the fifth five-year plan which was implemented during 1974 to 1979. The major objectives of the fifth five-year plan was to eradicate poverty and attain self-reliance. So at the time we said we must be self-sufficient in the previous one. But here we are going to say that we are going to have self-reliance, and our duty is also to eradicate poverty. In order to eradicate poverty, they also said, along with the male, they also require active participation of women who can help the family to come out of poverty. So this plan emphasized the need to train women, especially women in need of care and protection, women from low income groups, and women with dependent children and working women. This plan coincided with the International Women's Decade during 1975 to 85. So it also recommended for programs of functional literacy to equip women with skills and knowledge to perform the functions of the household and so on. So after debating in the parliament, a report was submitted by the Committee on the Status of Women in India, which was passed unanimously, and argued the Prime Minister to initiate a comprehensive program of legislative and administrative measures aimed at removing as far as possible the economic, the social injustice, disabilities, and discrimination to which Indian women are subjected to. The outcome of the report towards equality submitted by the government on status of women in India was the National Plan of Action for Women by the government. A significant outcome of the policy debate in the 70s was in the shift in recognition from viewing women as degree of welfare programs to that of to regarding them as critical groups of development. Before that, they have seen women, from the only welfare perspective, that because they are human beings, our duty is to take care of them, provide them subsidized food on subsidized rate, or else provide them some education and so on. Like, but during this time after this report, their shift has been shifted from welfare activities, and they started seeing them as a critical group which can be used for development process, because women, if properly educated, they can also be used as a human resource with whom they can contribute in the development process of the family as well as the nation. The recognition was reflected in the sixth 5 year plan, because a chapter on women's development was included in the 5 year plan at the time. To ensure a fair deal for women, national committee, a national committee was appointed in the year 1976 under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, which was endorsed the National Plan of Action. This administrative measures, or this committee has advised or advises the central and the state governments on the legislature and administrative measures which are necessary for removing all the discriminations which are against women, and revive all the programs and implement the programs. After 1975, there had been a shift in the policy towards women's issues due to the pressure from two sources. One is the distributing findings of the Committee on the Status of Women in India and the impact of International Women's Decade. These two things, these two sources have increased the pressure on the government to design the policies in order to develop, strengthen, and also remove all the discrimination towards women. Women's Welfare and Development Bureau was set up in the year 1976. Women's Welfare and Development Bureau was set up in the year 1976 under the Ministry of Social Welfare to act as a nodal point within the government to coordinate policies, programs for women's development, and to initiate measures. In the Ministry of Labor and Employment and Rural Development, special cells for women were established. In the context of preparation of the sixth 5 year plan, the Planning Commission, the Government of India has set up a working group on employment of women. This group was set up to scrutinize the statistics on women existing programs or schemes of the government which are meant for women, development of self-employment and also entrepreneurship among women, skill development, and development of cadres for promoting women employment. This committee submitted its reports in the year 1978. So similarly, working groups were appointed by the Ministry of Education in order to seek advice on adult education programs for women, and Ministry of Industrial Development to seek advice on self-employment for women. So this way, we can see that there was plenty of measures taken during the fifth 5 year plan. Now let us discuss about the sixth 5 year plan, which was implemented during 1980 to 85. The sixth plan recognized women's lack of access to resources as a critical factor impeding their development. It emphasized educational development, access to healthcare, and economical independence necessary for women's development. The sixth 5 year plan, for the first time in the history of Indian planning, has created a chapter on women and development. It conceived a multi-pronged strategy for women development. So they have taken the issues like employment and economical independence of women. They talked about women's education, both for the younger and for the adult education. They also talked about access to healthcare and family planning. They also talked about supporting services in order to meet the immediate needs of women, and also to uh, create the enabling policy, institutional and legal environment. This was the initiative which was taken by the government during the 6 5-year plan. A separate chapter which was denoted to women and development was included in this plan. They have emphasized on the provisions of institutional services, but it has been shifted to preventive and development aspects. In the year 1979 and 80, the government of India has set up a national committee on role and participation of women in agriculture and rural development. This committee studied the changes in rural women and submitted its report with the recommendations in the year 1980. In the year 1985, a separate Department of Women and Child Development was set up under the newly created Ministry of Human Resource Development. A variety of programs have been taken up under different sectors of development for improving the conditions of women and to increase their social and economical status. Gender specific programs were called upon and were initiated by the government, such as development of women and children in rural areas. We call it as DACRA groups. Development of women and children in rural areas, DACRA, which was initiated in the year 1982 and 83, my dear friends. So in the rural areas, based on the economical conditions, groups were formed. A DACRA group consists of minimum 10 to 20 members. And based on their economical condition, they are going to contribute the money, maybe every day 10 rupees or weekly 10 rupees or monthly so and so, and they are going to save it. And whenever the members require any finances, at the time they are going to take the money from this, whatever they have saved, on a nominal interest of 25 paisa. There is no need for them to go to the money lender and take the money on loans on higher interest. So the interest will be generated and that will be shared among the members. And even the government was ready to provide the loans for the people to initiate self-employment, to generate self-employment for the people. The government used to provide loans for them on very, very nominal interest rate, 0.25 paisa, so that they can also take care of their child's education, perform the child's marriage, and so on, my dear friends. In order to meet various expenditures, the government has initiated these DWACRA groups. The DWACRA program main aim is to increase or raise the income levels of the rural women, especially who belongs to the rural poor household. It also tries to enable the organized participation of groups of women of poor households in programs of credit, skill, training, and infrastructural support for self-employment. This access to basic services of health, education, child care, nutrition, drinking water, sanitation, and also so on can be improved. So the people they are going to participate in the groups and they can also take active part in the politics so that they can also make the government hear to their voices so that all these activities can also be implemented and improved, my dear friends. The DACRA program also aims to disseminate information to women regarding the government schemes, regarding their rights, regarding their policies, regarding loans, and so on, my dear friends. In the 6 5-year plan, it was stated that a household rather than an individual approach will be followed. Before that, whenever we talked about, it was an individual, but right now we are talking about household. All the members of the house will be taken into account, my dear friends, for developing the society. In order to uplift the economical condition of the family through packages of activities involving all the members, with particular attention being given to the economical programs, especially meant for women. We also have these integrated rural development programs, which were accorded priority to women heads of the household. 1/3 of the beneficiaries under this program were women. During this plan period, non-formal education centers exclusive for girls were set up, my dear friends. Girls belonging to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes were given scholarships. In the state of AP and Karnataka, separate universities for women were also established. The Ministry of Social Welfare, Government of India, set up a working group on personal policies for bringing greater involvement in science and technology, to review the participation of women in scientific establishments at various levels, to suggest measures for increasing their participation in science and technology. So, the committee has submitted a report with the recommendations like um, a wide spectrum of activities such as smokeless chulas, solar cookers, biogas plants, water purifier systems, and so on, where have to be taken up under the scheme of science and technology for women. Because using the charcoal, it emits more smoke, so there are chances the lady can have cancer and so on. So, in order to reduce the burden on the women, in order to ensure health of the women, the government in under the scheme of science and technology, they have talked about smokeless chullas, solar cookers, biogas plants, water purifier systems, and so on. They also try to reduce the drudgery of women in day-to-day activities, improved agriculture implements for better methods of sheep rearing, wool spinning, and food processing, which were also taken by the women. So, under the ICDS Integrated Child Development Scheme, the programs of nutrition intervention to pregnant and nursing mothers have been given priority. Hostels were provided for working women. Assistance have been provided to women in distress. Training come protection centers were some of the schemes of the government under these programs. Now let us discuss about the seventh five-year plan, which was implemented during 1985 to 1990. Um, in this, they have given the preference for women would receive preference, and women-headed households would compare at least 20% of the beneficiaries under the programs. So whatever the programs have been initiated, of which 20% of them are heading the household, my dear friends. The basic approach of the 7 5-year plan was to inculcate confidence among women, to make women realize their potential for development. So once women know their strength, then obviously they can work effectively. And also talked about bringing about awareness on their rights and privileges. This plan emphasized the need to open a venue for women and recognize women as a crucial resource in the development process of the nation. It also demanded the rights. It also emphasized training for women and take up economical activities and employment activities, my dear friends. This program was uh, provided joint pattas initiated in the sixth plan and extended in the seventh plan. In this, the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India has established a separate department for women and child welfare. The Department of Women and Child Welfare or Child Development plans and executes programs which are meant for the development of women and children, my dear friends. So during this time, much emphasis has done on developing the women. The Indian Parliament has adopted a national policy on education in the year 1986, which was also included in chapter as a chapter on education for women's equality. The 20-point program was launched by the government of India in the year 1975, which was recast and redefined in the year 1982 and also in the year 1986. The 20-point program was introduced to eradicate poverty, raise productivity, reduce income inequalities, and remove social and economical disparities, and also improve the quality of life. With this, they have introduced the 20-point program, my dear friends. The government of India in the year 1986 has set up a national expert committee on women prisoners to study the drawbacks of existing facilities and services being provided for the women prisoners. The report has submitted that suggested that we have to take legislative measures, custodial, correctional, and prison reform should be initiated, which are meant for women. The National Commission for Women monitors and implements all these suggestions. Now, in the year 1988, National Perspective Plan for Women was taken up. A group was set up to evaluate the impact of development of the programs and to also review the policies and programs which are designed for them, and also to draft the perspective plans for the year 1988 to 2000. The National Perspective Plan for Women uh, was up to 2000 AD, was released in the year 1988. So they have made the review on rural development, agriculture, education, health, employment, legislation, and so on. And it tries to bring policy changes in this. The perspective plan recognized the importance of women, and they said that they argued that there must be establishment of apex body for providing training to women, to sensitize administrative machinery at all levels on the issues related with women, and to revamp the existing content, methodology, and monitoring the training of the functionaries. So these were the suggestions given by the planning commission or the committee at that time. The plan has recommended for women's access to productive resources, to review property, to ensure right to property, to strengthen of women-oriented waste land development programs such as social forestry and so on, skill training for women in agriculture, animal husbandry and so on, unionization of women, special training program for women, especially rural women for entrepreneurship, support services for women in distress, legal aid centers, special cells for enforcing legislative for the women, bargaining sex discrimination test, and so on. And also talked about uniform civil code for all its citizens. Okay, these are the things which were being taken up in the 7 5-year plan in order to improve the social conditions, economical conditions of women, my dear friends. So if you have any doubts, my dear friends, you are free to ask, or else we'll conclude for the day. If you have any doubts, we can